Beat 'em up games are kind of synonymous with being a bit of a one-note genre. A lot of them are just kind of, defeat these enemies, move to the next area, beat the boss, go to the next level, rinse and repeat. Some of them even just have a single attack button. There's sometimes not a ton of variety. And yeah, some games have branched out the combat more and of course spiced things up variety-wise, but honestly, I think what makes beat 'em up so popular and fun is just the simplicity and familiarity. You know what you're getting into, and it's just kind of comforting to just brawl with some bad guys and enjoy yourself. They have branched out from just being 2D side-scroller games as gaming has evolved into 3D landscapes, but I think most people fondly remember the classic format of them. And of course, when classic beat-em-ups get mentioned, the golden standards are usually brought up like Turtles in Time, Final Fight, the X-Men arcade, and the Simpsons arcade. And one I feel is appreciated but not mentioned nearly enough, Batman Returns. Seriously, this game kicks ass. Like, look at those big character sprites. It's so good looking. There's been quite a few that came out more recently. We got the Scott Pilgrim movie game that was 10 or so years ago, which got a remaster last year, and as well as sequels to classic beat-em-up franchises like Streets of Rage 4 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. I'm obviously missing a few, but in this video I want to mention some that might have gone under the radar over the past few decades. I'm sticking to stuff that was released after the year 2000 and on. And I'm going to start with the oldest and move closer to current day. So first up we have Minority Report, which is very loosely based on the Spielberg movie of the same name, minus Tom Cruise's likeness. This is just some random blonde dude voiced by Clancy Brown, which, hey, works just fine for me. This is one of the dreaded movie tie-in games, which were a dime a dozen back in 2002. It came out on all the major consoles and was passed over by general audiences, but what people didn't realize is that this was an awesome brawler with hilarious ragdoll physics, which allowed you to beat the shit out of enemies and toss them around like toys. You could throw them over ledges, through windows, onto a hot stove full of pots and pans. It was hilariously awesome and fun as hell to play. There were some minor shooting and exploration bits, but the majority of it is just a dumb beat 'em up with an assortment of moves, combos, and destructible environments. I had a blast with this back in the day, and I was always surprised it wasn't more beloved. It's also cheap too, you could probably find it for a couple bucks on eBay nowadays. In the same generation, we got The Warriors, another movie tie-in game but decades later than the movie, and made with insane attention to detail and care by Rockstar Games. The Warriors is one of my favorite movies of all time, and the game just expands upon the characters and backstories and everything else like I never would have expected it to. It's a killer product for fans of the movie, and one of the most impressive games the company ever released in my opinion. I really wish they would do more projects like this more often. But yeah, the majority of this game is really brutal, violent combat, with lots of weapons thrown in the mix, awesome fighting and grappling moves, and some really fun environmental exploration thrown in. Much like Minority Report, you could throw enemies all around, bash them over the heads with bricks. It was fast and frantic gameplay. The multiplayer modes were a blast too, and the game also has a secret hidden side-scroller beat-em-up game unlockable. Seriously, this thing is like a whole other video game on its own. It could have easily been released nowadays as like a DLC or an expansion, but they just threw it in the game, like as a free, here you go, unlock this, have fun. The Warriors game is an incredible game that stands on its own, but along with the movie, it's an essential companion piece. It's also playable on PlayStation 4 and 5 now in the store, so you should download that if you haven't played it. So sticking with the movie tie-in theme, the 2009 Watchmen movie got two small games released a few months apart, The End Is Nigh, Part 1 and 2. It was a really cool idea, which has players controlling either Rorschach or Night Owl, and is a pretty basic story-driven beat-em-up. It wasn't beloved or anything, more so just a passable action game, but it's got all the elements of a classic beat-em-up, just with some cool superhero characters that were voiced and modeled exactly like the film. I wasn't totally in love with it at the time, but looking back, it was a really cool tie-in to the movie, and nowadays I just wish they would do this with literally any action movie. It's something that fans can appreciate and enjoy, and that's really it. Now for something original, but definitely inspired by cheesy action films, we got Shank. Shank is a cartoony, blood-soaked thrill ride with a meathead main character slicing through hordes of enemies, and even having some fun gunplay thrown into the mix. You can juggle enemies in the air like a Devil May Cry game. It was fast and fun, with variety in every combat encounter, and it had no shame in just being silly and stupid. It did get a sequel a few years later, which I unfortunately did not play, but the original I think got some decent love, and I feel like this is mostly forgotten about now. I'd love to see both of them get remastered and put out together, kind of like the developer Clyde did with their other awesome game, Mark of the Ninja. It's one of those games that relishes in its own dumb, mindless mayhem, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to revisit this one. Batman Arkham City, on the other hand, was and still is a very critically successful game, and one that some still call one of the best. But I'm not talking about the main game. I want to mention a single challenge map that's featured in the Riddler's Revenge game mode. It's called Freight Train, and it's a single level that has the same combat and moveset from the game, but it's a straightforward side-scroller beat-em up. I absolutely love this level, and I would play it over and over, just begging for a game made entirely of levels like this. The rich and rewarding combat of the main game, but in a classic move to the right level, it was perfect. We did kind of get our wishes a few years later when Arkham Origins came out and released a smaller tie-in game called Arkham Origins Blackgate. It was essentially an Arkham game with the exploration, stealth, puzzles, but also featuring the series staple combat. I enjoyed this quite a bit as I'm just a big fan of the franchise and I'll play anything from it, but it was a bit of a downgrade and felt like something that was just put out to kind of meet a sales quota. It wasn't developed by Rocksteady, just like Arkham Origins, so I wish Rocksteady would have went for it and put out a full game like their Arkham City train map, like I just mentioned. But I'm not complaining when we should be grateful for getting a side-scroller beat-em-up Batman game at all. But man, bring back the Batman Returns gameplay, but with modern graphics, and throw some Arkham combat encounters in there. That's my ideal game right there. For the next one, and I really need to return to this game, I only played a few levels and then got distracted by something else, but it's Mother Russia Bleeds. It's a really cool, grimy and graphic, ultra-violent beat-em-up that you can tell is modeled and designed exactly like the classics we all know. There's a lot going on here. There's power-ups and modifiers, crazy enemies and bosses. It's definitely one of those games that was designed to shock with its hard R-rated subject matter. Most likely influenced by the Hotline Miami series and their success, I would say. It's absolutely worth checking out, and I'm excited to give it another shot, as it unfortunately got buried in my backlog, but I think this is one that slipped under a lot of people's radars. And here we are up to current day. This one's so current it's actually only a few months old as of this video's recording. And it's Midnight Fight Express. It's exactly like if you watch movies like The Raid or a TV show like Gangs of London and wanted to go to town wrecking goons in various levels full of weapons and throwable objects. The combat starts out basic and is expanded upon with every new upgrade. You can grapple and perform finishers, you can use guns and melee weapons, perform counters with a designated button similar to the Arkham games, and basically just turn off your brain while doing so. It's a great little indie title with tons of unlockable customizations for your character, tons of replay value with level challenges, and it's full of hilarious and weird enemies and bosses. It gets weirder and weirder, and I really appreciate that a lot about it. It's also made primarily by one guy, Jacob Zwinel, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, which is awesome, so hey, shout out to that guy. He obviously loves beat-em-ups and awesome action movies, so he just was like, hey, I'll do this myself. So check the game out if you can and show the guy some support. So those are just a few more modern beat-em-ups that are cool and worth checking out. Some are more easily available than others. Let me know if some of them I missed or if you have some recommendations, and yeah, thanks for watching.